Nia heard footsteps. She kept mopping, eyes down. Then a cold, rich voice cut through. "Girls like you forget who runs this place." A hand came for her face. She slapped first. The sound echoed. The museum director stood in the hall, staring. Nia's voice shook. "I didn't hit to hurt. I hit to stop the hurt." And the woman she slapped wasn't a guest. She was the board chair. Quick break. Drop your city in the comments and subscribe. The next moment flips this story. The day had started ordinary, which is how trouble likes to walk in. Nia Carter worked the night shift at the Harborline Museum, the glass and stone jewel that leaned over the bay like a watchful eye. She scrubbed floors until her fingers went numb, changed liners, polished brass, and learned where light pooled and where shadows kept their secrets. She liked starting at the East Wing. Sunrise found her there. Even if she never had time to watch it, she didn't come for art, she came for hours. Her son, Malik, was 7 and brave in ways children shouldn't need to be. The hospital called it asthma with a fancy last name. Co-pays didn't care what words doctors chose. Nia counted tips from the cafe, counted minutes on her break to call home, counted breaths when fear climbed her ribs. The museum wore quiet like a suit. Docents smiled in slow motion. Donors spoke in a language made of favors. The director, Graham Hale, walked like he was forever late to a meeting with his own conscience. He thanked the staff by first names. He never asked how the back staircase smelled when the dehumidifiers failed. The board chair, Vivian Hale, liked corners that shone and people who didn't. She was elegance with sharp edges, a gold bracelet that announced itself before she did. She noticed fingerprints on glass. She did not notice hands. Nia learned to be invisible. Push cart, swap bins, slide past whispers. But the gala week turned staying small into a sport. Trucks unloaded crate after crate. Flowers arrived in waves. The air tasted like metal and roses. Lists multiplied. Rules did too. And so did small cuts you couldn't argue with. Not that cleaner. Not that rag. Not that face. On the morning of the slap, the bay threw gray light against the windows. Nia was early. She liked 30 minutes to walk the route and make the building breathe. The catering crew clattered into the service hall. The event manager rehearsed a smile in a microwave door. The head guard, Mr. Alvarez, moved chairs without being asked. He always did that. He said it kept him young. He called Nia kid, even though she was 31 and already older than her years. "You got sleep?" he asked. "Some," she said. "Some is a lie good people tell," he said, and kept moving. At 9, the pristine country of the galleries grew crowded. Florists in black dresses floated in. Techs tested lights. An intern got lost and pretended it was research. Nia changed a bag, tied the knot so clean it could pass inspection, and lifted her cart's handle again. That's when Vivian turned the corner. She was perfume and silver, pearls steady at her throat. Her eyes slid from the mop to Nia's face and stopped there, as if a mirror had misbehaved. A caterer edged away like a tide. The room held its breath because rooms learn from people. "You again," Vivian said softly, which was somehow worse than loud. "Do you touch the frames when no one looks?" Nia kept her voice even. "No, ma'am. Our donors can smell disorder," Vivian said. "Don't spread it." Nia started to wheel past. Vivian stepped closer. "You think the director is kind to you," she murmured. "He's kind to dogs and lost umbrellas. Don't read into it." Nia tasted copper. She had heard versions of this before in other places with floors that gleamed. In other lives where she learned when to swallow a reply. But then Vivian lifted her hand. Maybe to point. Maybe to make the air obey. Something in Nia snapped. Her palm rose. The sound was small and enormous at once. Vivian reeled, one hand on her cheek, eyes wide, not with pain but with disbelief that gravity worked on her too. A florist dropped a ribbon. A catering tray nudged a table leg. The crowd did what crowds do. They judged before they knew what they saw. Up on the mezzanine, Graham Hale stood at the rail. He had arrived early, hair still damp, a knot in his tie that hadn't decided what it wanted to be. He saw motion first, then faces, then the shape of a story forming without his permission. "Nia," he said, voice low, like a man who found a fire in a room labeled "No Flames." "What happened?" Nia swallowed. She could feel her heart battering the cage of her chest. Anger wanted to speak. Fear wanted to hide. Truth wanted something else. She was about to... Nia stopped. Her hands shook. She placed them on the cart handle to steady them. "I work here to keep things clean. Some things don't like being cleaned." Vivian straightened. The mark on her cheek was faint, but the story was loud. She glanced up at her husband. The look said everything and its opposite. "Protect me. Punish her. Prove you're still mine." "Security," Vivian said. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "Remove her," Alvarez hesitated. His eyes flicked from Nia to Vivian to Graham. He didn't move. Years on the job had taught him that the worst mistakes happen in the first 5 seconds. "Wait," Graham said. "A single word can be a door." No one moves. People hate waiting when they want a verdict. The florist tried to look like a plant. The intern pretended to read a wall label. The event manager whispered into a headset with the volume turned down. Nia stood still and did the hardest thing she knew how to do. Nothing. Vivian smoothed her hair with a hand that trembled almost invisibly. "Harborline will not be mocked," she said. "This staffer just assaulted a member." Nia lifted her chin a fraction. "I didn't hit a member," she said. "I stopped a bully." Graham stared at her like he was reading a label too small for human eyes. "Do you know who you just struck?" he asked. Nia breathed once. In. Out. "A woman who thinks the building is hers," she said. "Not the people in it." Vivian's smile went thin. "I don't think," she said. "I chair," the word dropped like a gavel. "And everything that looked simple wasn't." Graham's face changed. The kind way. The careful way. The way people arrange themselves when they are about to disappoint someone. Whoever they pick. "Office," he said. "Now." Alvarez stepped aside. Nia pushed her cart, wheels whispering on stone, and followed the director through the staff door. The hallway smelled like coffee and lemon oil. Fluorescent lights hummed. Ordinary things kept being ordinary while her life rearranged itself. She thought of Malik's inhaler, of the text from her sister before sunrise. He slept. He asked for you. She thought of the rent due Friday and the way bills could look like cliffs. In Graham's office, the blinds were open to the bay. Boats wrote slow lines on the water. On his desk sat a folder thick with seating charts, a pen, a photo of him shaking hands with someone famous. Also a paper cup with a lipstick print that wasn't his. Nia noticed and then tried to unnotice. She stayed standing. Graham closed the door and turned, one hand on the knob like he still might reverse the last 5 minutes by walking backward through them. "Tell me," he said. "Your wife raised her hand," Nia said. "I stopped it." "I used mine." Graham's jaw tightened. "She's not..." He stopped. "She is the board chair." "I heard," Nia said. Everyone heard. He rubbed his temples. The smallest human gesture, and somehow that made him real and not just a name on fundraising letters. "You can't strike a patron." "I didn't strike a patron," Nia said. "I drew a line." He looked at her like a man considering a map that left off the mountains. "Do you want this job?" he asked. "I want my kid to breathe," Nia said. Silence sat between them, heavy and uncertain. Somewhere outside, a crate thumped. Somewhere in the building, an artwork waited to be looked at. Inside this room, 2 people tried to decide if truth was a policy or a risk. Graham lowered his hand. "For now," he said, "you stay. But there will be questions." "There always are," Nia said softly. He nodded once. A truce signed in pencil. Then he reached for the phone. Out in the corridor, Alvarez waited on a bench that squeaked. He didn't look up when Nia stepped out. He just said, "Breathe, kid." Nia did. The breath felt like work. She pushed her cart down the hall toward the galleries that never told the same story to two people, and she wondered which story the building would tell about her. The next morning came with fog curling over the bay and whispers already waiting for her at the staff gate. Nia didn't need to hear the words to know what they were made of. Every smile felt rehearsed. Every silence was a mirror. Alvarez met her by the clock-in screen. "Paperwork's on hold," he said. She nodded. "For how long?" He lifted a shoulder. "Until they decide what's worse, what you did or what it means." Inside, the museum breathed in a new kind of quiet. Posters for the gala gleamed against marble. Guests would arrive in 2 days. Cameras, donors, speeches. Graham's office door stayed closed. Vivian's car still occupied the front space, the one reserved for legacy patrons. Nia cleaned anyway. The mop, the cart, the rhythm, all the things that reminded her she was still standing. She hummed under her breath, low, like armor. At noon, an email pinged on every staff tablet. Mandatory meeting. 3 p.m. Gallery A. No subject line, no sender listed. The museum had found its stage. 3 o'clock. Rows of folding chairs, the smell of polish, the shimmer of unease. Vivian sat in front, perfect posture, Band-Aid-colored concealer hiding the mark that still whispered underneath. Graham stood beside her, hands clasped. He spoke first. "We've had an incident." Eyes flicked toward Nia, then away. He continued, measured, rehearsed. "The museum values dignity and safety for all." Vivian's smile was the period at the end of his sentence. Then, to everyone's surprise, he added, "But we also value truth. Miss Carter will remain employed while an internal review takes place." A ripple, not applause, something between shock and breath. Vivian's jaw tightened. "The board will meet tonight," she said. "Of course," Graham answered. The meeting dissolved. No one spoke to Nia, but no one touched her cart either. Respect and fear sometimes wore the same face. That evening, she found herself sitting outside on the stone steps, uniform jacket around her shoulders. The bay looked calm, pretending not to listen. Alvarez joined her, 2 coffees in hand. "You made them look at themselves," he said. "I made rent harder," she said. He chuckled. "Those 2 things usually hold hands." She sipped the coffee. Bitter, warm. "Do you ever get tired of watching people with power pretend they earned it?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "I get tired when they forget to say thank you. But I keep showing up, because buildings remember who cared for them." The museum lights blinked on one by one. From a distance, it looked peaceful. Up close, it hummed with politics. Later, in the locker room, Nia's phone buzzed. Malik. Feeling better. She smiled. For a second, the world was simple again. Then another message. "Mom. They called here. Something about a review. You okay?" She hesitated before replying. "Still standing." She tucked the phone away, leaned against the metal locker, and exhaled. The hallway light flickered once, twice, like the building itself wasn't sure which story to believe. That night, a storm rolled in from the sea. Rain on glass. Thunder somewhere behind the bridge. Graham sat alone in his office replaying the sound of the slap in his head. He didn't defend Nia because she was right. At least, that's what he told himself. He defended her because for the first time in years, someone in that building acted without calculation. Vivian's reflection glared back from the window. Her voice, distant but sharp. "You're risking everything for a cleaning woman." He whispered to the empty room. "Maybe that's what everything's worth." When Nia returned the next morning, a single sheet of paper waited on her cart. No signature, just typed words. Temporary suspension lifted. Continued duties. Pending board conclusion. Someone, somewhere, had decided she could keep working. For now. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like a reprieve. She tied her apron strings, straightened her shoulders, and walked toward the east wing as the first light touched the bay. Outside, the gulls called. Inside, rumors stirred like dust. And above it all, the portraits of old benefactors stared down, as if waiting to see whether courage could stay quiet long enough to survive. By the end of the week, the storm outside had passed, but the one inside the Harborline Museum was only just beginning. Every corridor buzzed with the same whispered question. "Did you hear? The janitor hit the board chair." Some said it with disgust, others with awe. But all of them said it carefully, like speaking Nia's name might pull them into the story too. Vivian Hale, meanwhile, wasn't finished rewriting the narrative. The board had called an emergency session. Words like conduct policy, liability, and public optics floated through emails and hallways like invisible tripwires. The gala was now less about art and more about control. That Friday morning, Nia found herself summoned again. A formal letter taped to her locker. Board hearing. Monday, 10 a.m. Attendance mandatory. She folded it slowly. No surprise, no panic. Just a dull ache, the kind that comes when trouble finally keeps its promise. Alvarez caught her expression as she left the break room. "They're calling a hearing?" he asked. She nodded. "Then you'd better find someone who'll stand beside you in that room," he said. "Like a lawyer, like a witness," he said. "Someone who saw who threw the first stone." That night, while the museum slept, Nia replayed everything in her head. Vivian's words, the look in Graham's eyes, the hush that followed the slap. It all came back sharper in the dark. She took out her phone, scrolled through her contacts, and stopped at one name. Tasha, intern. The young woman had been there that day, hiding behind a flower cart. Nia typed, "Tasha, you were in the gallery that morning. Did you see what happened?" 3 dots blinked for a long time, then disappeared. No reply. She set the phone down and rubbed her temples. Courage always looked easier on paper. The next morning, as Nia polished the East Wing floor, someone approached quietly. "Tasha." Her hands were full of catalog papers. Her voice trembled. "I saw it," she said. Nia froze. "You don't have to—" "I already wrote it down," Tasha interrupted. "A statement. What she said to you. How she lifted her hand first." Nia blinked. "Why would you do that?" Tasha's eyes shone. "Because my mother cleans offices, and I've watched her swallow words her whole life." For a moment, silence stood between them like a fragile bridge. Nia whispered, "Thank you." Tasha smiled faintly. "Don't thank me yet. Vivian already asked the board to keep me off the intern roster next quarter." Across the building, Graham Hale sat at his desk staring at 2 versions of the same email. One drafted by the museum's lawyer, "We condemn the employee's behavior." The other drafted by his own conscience. "We review the event with fairness and transparency." He hadn't sent either. Vivian stepped into his office without knocking. "We're issuing a statement," she said. "You'll sign it." He looked up. "It's not the full story." "It's the official one," she replied. He leaned back, tired. "You can't crush someone just to protect the reflection in your donor plaque." She smiled, thin, sharp. "You're mistaking reputation for reflection. One survives longer." Monday came. The boardroom was cold, polished, and silent. A semicircle of chairs faced one empty seat, hers. Nia sat, hands in her lap, uniform pressed, hair tied back like armor. Vivian presided at the head, immaculate, unreadable. Graham sat to her right, eyes hollow. Tasha was allowed in only to submit her written statement. She placed it on the table, fingers trembling slightly, then turned to leave. Vivian tapped the paper once with a manicured nail. "An intern's word against mine?" Nia met her gaze. "It's not her word. It's the truth you hoped no one would risk saying." The air in the room changed, sharp, electric. One of the trustees cleared his throat. Let's proceed in order. For the next hour, they questioned her like she was a stain on marble. Why didn't you walk away? Why didn't you report it first? Why did you raise your hand? She answered each calmly. Because sometimes walking away means agreeing to stay broken. By the end, Vivian's composure was cracking, a hairline fracture behind every polite phrase. When the board dismissed them for deliberation, Graham lingered at the door. "She's not done," he whispered. Nia nodded. "Neither am I." Outside the boardroom, the corridor felt different, like the museum itself was holding its breath. Staff stood in clusters pretending to sort files, wipe counters, check phones. Whispers slid between them like echoes. Tasha met Nia by the elevator. "They'll try to bury this," she said. "I know. But they can't unhear it now." Nia smiled faintly. "Sometimes that's all you can do. Make silence impossible." The elevator doors opened, reflecting both their faces. Different ages. Same resolve. Down below, the cleaning cart waited. The mop, the bucket, the rag. Ordinary tools that suddenly felt like symbols of something larger. She stepped in, the hum of the elevator matching her pulse. By the time the doors opened, she knew. The real fight wasn't in that boardroom. It was in every place people like her were told to be grateful for crumbs and stay quiet while power called it kindness. And for the first time in her life, Nia Carter wasn't quiet anymore. The board promised a decision within 72 hours. That was museum speak for "we'll see which way the wind blows." But rumors didn't wait. By the next morning, the harbor line had turned into an echo chamber. Staff messaged one another in coded phrases. Someone leaked a photo. Vivian in the gallery, hand on cheek, face tight with rage. No caption needed. The internet supplied one. When money meets consequences. It spread fast. Too fast. By noon, the museum's PR inbox was drowning. Donors demanded explanations. Journalists asked for comment. And still, Nia kept mopping floors. Not to prove anything. Just because that's what she did when her world was shaking. That afternoon, she found Graham waiting near the staff entrance. He looked exhausted, his tie missing, his words careful. "They're holding a press conference," he said. "About me?" "About everything," she blinked. "And you're letting it happen?" He hesitated. "If I stop it, it looks like bias." "It is bias," she said. "The kind that hides behind manners." He rubbed his forehead. "Nia, I'm trying to keep this place from burning down." "Maybe it needs to," she said quietly. "Sometimes fire shows what's worth rebuilding." By evening, the main hall was transformed again. Lights, cameras, velvet ropes. Except this time, the story wasn't art. It was her. Vivian stood at the podium, immaculate in pearl white. Behind her, the board. Beside her, Graham, his expression unreadable. Nia watched from the corridor, half hidden behind a column. The air was thick with flashbulbs and whispers. Vivian began, her tone smooth. "An unfortunate incident occurred involving a staff member whose behavior does not represent the harbor line's values." Nia's pulse quickened. Each word was a blade. But then, a voice cut in. "Tell them the rest." Graham had stepped forward. The room fell still. Cameras swiveled. Vivian turned, her smile tightening. "Excuse me?" He spoke louder. "Tell them what happened before that. Tell them what you said to her." Gasps flickered through the crowd. Vivian's composure wavered. Just slightly, but enough. "I don't recall the specifics," she said, clipped. "I do," he said. "You insulted her. You raised your hand first, and when she defended herself, you called it disrespect." The cameras clicked like gunfire. Vivian's face hardened. "You're protecting her over your own reputation?" He shook his head. "I'm protecting what little truth this building has left." Reporters shouted questions. Security hesitated, unsure who to remove. Vivian snapped, "End this." But it was too late. Tasha appeared from the back of the crowd, her voice trembling but clear. "I recorded it," she said. "That day in the gallery. It's all here. Every lens turned toward her. The room seemed to tilt. Vivian froze. Nia felt her heart stop. Not from fear, but from something heavier. Relief. The recording played through the sound system. Muffled but unmistakable. Vivian's voice first. Girls like you forget who owns this place. Then Nia's voice. Soft but firm. I'm just cleaning it. Then the slap. Loud. Final. No one spoke for several seconds. When the clip ended, the silence was thicker than marble. Vivian's hand trembled. Her mask cracked. Not all at once, but visibly, painfully. She turned to Graham. You did this, she hissed. He met her eyes. No, he said. You did. Security escorted Vivian out before the press could corner her. Graham stayed, answering every question the reporters threw. Nia remained by the doorway, unsure whether to flee or stand tall. Tasha found her, shaking. I didn't know it would blow up like this, she said. Nia smiled gently. Truth never knows how big it is until it's spoken. Hours later, when the museum emptied, Nia walked through the galleries alone. The paintings glowed under soft light. Art about rebellion, pain, beauty, all the things she now understood more deeply than ever. Graham appeared beside her. They're going to ask for her resignation, he said quietly. Nia nodded. She'll blame you, he added. She already does, he sighed. This place, it changes people. It didn't change me, she said. He looked at her, really looked at her. No, it reminded you who you already were. Outside, the storm had given way to stars. The bay shimmered, calm at last. Nia stood on the steps, the museum behind her. The same building, but somehow smaller now. Tomorrow, there would be fallout. Meetings, statements, maybe even revenge. But tonight, there was peace. And in the stillness, Nia realized something simple, almost gentle. Sometimes standing up for yourself isn't about winning. It's about making the world stop pretending it didn't see. The news broke before sunrise. Harbor Line board chair, steps down amid scandal. The headline glowed on every phone screen, every morning show ticker, every whispered conversation over coffee. Vivian Hale had resigned. Officially, it was for health reasons. Unofficially, the video spoke louder than any press release ever could. By the time Nia reached the museum gates, photographers were waiting. Flashes popped like tiny storms, voices calling her name as if she were the story and not the woman who lived through it. She didn't stop. Didn't wave. She just kept walking. Because surviving something didn't mean you wanted to relive it. Inside, the staff parted like water. Some nodded. Some whispered thanks they didn't have the courage to say out loud. Even the marble floors felt different. Less cold, somehow. Alvarez met her at the staff desk, holding out her badge. You're cleared, he said. No suspension, no warnings. The board voted last night. She took the badge, her fingers trembling slightly. What about you? He grinned. Still too old to fire and too stubborn to quit. Upstairs, Graham waited in his office. He looked lighter, the strain gone from his shoulders. Vivian's lawyers are handling her exit, he said. She'll be out of the city by the weekend. Nia stood at the doorway. And me? He smiled faintly. You're not just staying. You're getting a promotion, she blinked. A promotion? Assistant supervisor, he said. Full benefits. You've earned it. For a moment, she couldn't speak. The word earned felt strange, like hearing her name in a new language. When she finally found her voice, it was soft. I just did my job, he nodded. Exactly. Later, she stood in the east wing again, the one that always caught the first light. Through the tall windows, the bay shimmered like glass. Her reflection stared back. Tired, yes, but unbroken. Tasha joined her, a lanyard bouncing against her chest. Guess what? They extended my internship, and she smiled shyly. I got a scholarship. Nia smiled back. Good. You earned it too. They stood side by side in silence for a while, watching the gulls circle above the water. That afternoon, reporters returned, but the museum had changed its story. The headlines now read, Harbor Line implements new code of ethics. Staff voices to be included in policy decisions. The same building that once silenced its workers now quoted them in press releases. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close. But it was a start. When her shift ended, Nia walked home through the narrow streets near the harbor. Her phone buzzed. Mom, he's better. The doctors said he can come home soon. Then another. Malik, can we go see your museum someday? She smiled through tears. For the first time in months, the future didn't feel like a cliff. It felt like a door. That night, the harbor line was quiet again. No cameras, no speeches, just the low hum of lights and the whisper of wind against glass. Graham walked the empty halls, pausing in front of a new display. A photograph from the gala night, frozen mid-motion. In it, Nia stood in the corner of the frame, blurred but steady. He smiled. Some stories didn't need plaques. Outside, on the museum steps, Nia looked up at the sky. The city glowed behind her, restless and alive. For once, she wasn't running or hiding or apologizing. She breathed deep, slow, steady, whole. The night air was cool against her skin, like forgiveness she didn't ask for but somehow received. And as she turned to go, her voice barely above a whisper, she said to herself, I didn't just clean floors, I cleaned the truth. Then she walked away. Toward home, toward light, toward everything still waiting to begin.